All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 5 of the Fast, Easy Success Marketing Insight.
The Fast, Easy Success Marketing Insider, the uncut, uncensored podcast, bringing you the refreshing, no fluff, no BS views in business, sales, and marketing you desire. Your host, author, marketing strategist, direct response copywriter, and serial entrepreneur, Eric Barton, the results specialist. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, action.
I want to thank everyone for tuning in to the Fast, Easy Success Marketing Insider. And there's a lot of exciting things coming today and in the future for you. So make sure you hit that subscription button right now so you don't miss out on the value-packed podcast coming your way. And before we dive into our show and our very special guest today, I just want to welcome you to head over to fasteasysuccess.com. Go ahead and grab your business building tips sent directly to your email daily. And when you head over to fasteasysuccess.com, I'm also going to give you your free business cheat sheets. These are going to help you with your websites, emails, and writing. All right, let's dive in because I'm excited to have our next guest come on. He's a special guest joining you and I on our show, and definitely thought jamming with this man today would bring some great value to you. If you haven't discovered this man yet, you're definitely in for a treat today. He's a marketing strategist and direct response copywriter who basically, to me, has a very unique perspective and definitely practices a few different strategies in business that I felt were not only refreshing, but thought valuable to bring him on. And anyways, let's dive into this. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to welcome to the show Jason Leister. Jason, thanks so much for taking the time to jam with us today.
Good to be here. Thanks so much.
Nice. I'm excited to have you here, and I know everyone out there basically has their ticket. They're ready for this profitable thrill ride, so let's kind of jump into it. And I want to ask real quick, Jason, for people that aren't familiar with you, how did you really start out or get the bug to start out in sales, marketing, and really the copywriting world?
It happened after I got out of college. I pursued a very practical career path to become a church musician. Okay. And got out into the real world, lived for a while, realized it probably wasn't the most efficient way to pay the bills. So I started dabbling in web design. I've always been kind of a computer geek. Okay. And kind of started designing websites. Quickly became my first business was a tech consultant, for companies, where I quickly realized that while that was cool, life was a lot easier when you were on the side of helping them make money instead of when you were on the side of helping them fix things for the cheapest and the quickest, know. So that's kind of how I transitioned then over into the sales and marketing side.
Nice. Well, you kind of branched off and started doing your own thing in the freelancing, or?
Yeah, I'd had my own internet businesses, for years and years, so I was kind of learning just on my own, and woke up one day, 7 years ago now, and realized that while it was great to have, my own internet business, I hadn't chosen niches really with huge potential. Right. So I could aim the very same skills I was doing at much better targets for other people, and that's when I started freelancing.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I know, I guess, and this really kind of relates, I guess, and this is everybody, and it's kind of something I've talked about a lot, and I've heard you talk about this before, and I think you actually referred to this as the unsexy sales secret in business, and you were referring to lead generation. And, this is where a lot of I would say most business owners unfortunately get this wrong. And if you get this part right, the lead generation process, your business and definitely your life can get a lot easier and a lot less stressful. Can you tell the audience maybe your thoughts on lead generation and what you feel really the process or the right way to do it is?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is one right way. I think there's smart ways to think about it and not so smart ways to think about it. And I think the important thing that I wish someone had probably told me is that just in the choice of your target market and the business that you're in, like in those two choices, that already contains the seeds kind of for how easy or not easy your lead generation is going to be.
Right.
You know, there are some groups of people that are just, you know, not really passionate about the subject area like that, you know, that your business is in. They're hard to reach. They're not paying attention. They don't wake up in pain. So like all of these things, I wish someone had said, hey, you know, when you're getting your business off the ground, really think about how you're going to reach these people, because if it's hard, like you really should consider figuring out how to make it not hard, you know?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people probably skip those steps, and then they get to the how do I generate leads now, and they really struggle to find a good way to really connect with the people they're trying to reach.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like you said, to think about how they're, you know, not only the marketing channel and the market, just, you know, think about the overall process. Because a lot of people, and I think I even listened to an interview you were talking about, or me and you maybe were speaking about this. You know, when a lot of people say they want leads, they don't really want leads. They want customers. And like you were saying, leads are kind of something that you nurture and kind of work on and build a relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit extreme in that direction, but that's I'm all in that method of generating leads, you know, and it is a process, and in my experience, it's by far the hardest part of the whole thing. And it often takes a lot of work and trial and error before you find that vein, you know, that returns good things. And I think that separates the men from the boys, kind of, you know?
Yeah, that's a great point. Because you say, like, I think you referred to it as the trust bank, right? Depositing in the trust bank.
That's how I generate leads. Like, so right. Because I'm selling myself, right? So that's a little bit. So my approach is, on the surface, quite a bit different probably than if I'm selling a widget on the shelf, you know?
Right.
Because since I'm selling myself, now we've got personalities involved, we have egos involved, we have a whole other level of stuff you need to be aware of in the sales process. And so when I started trying to sell myself, I went out and generated my own leads by picking names, you know, people I knew that hired people like me, writing them letters, telling them how great I was, you know, kind of beating my chest, like that variety of promotion.
Right, the King Kong, yeah.
And it took me a few years to like realize that is not a smart way to approach things when you are trying to attract someone towards you and ask them for a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think you referred to this, and even in I think when you and I spoke before, you actually recommended Dan Kennedy's book. I believe it's No BS Trust Marketing. And you spoke about, and this is a process you do, what you're speaking about now is kind of delaying the sale as well.
Yeah, I mean, he says in that book that the longer you can do that, the better off for you, and my experience certainly is that. And, I mean, we humans are bizarre creatures. You can learn how we work and work with that, right. Or you can learn how we work and fight it, you know, and struggle.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, because a lot of people don't, I mean, I've talked about this before too, a lot of people don't realize, some people, yeah, the low-hanging fruit, some of your leads are going to buy right away, and some may buy, you know, a week, a month later, and some even a year or two down the road. I mean, I've had clients that have been on my list over a year and called me and said, all right, Eric, I'm ready to roll. So, you know, like you said, building that trust and that relationship, it's not easy, you know, and you're giving up a lot, maybe sacrificing the immediate sales, but I think, like you said, even, you know, kind of building a better relationship and better quality and, you know, higher prices as well that you can command.
Yeah, I mean, the trust is about doing the work you have to do to build an investment that, to me, is way important than money. Like, it can be turned into money at various times, but if you have the money without the trust, then it's going to be very short-lived. And the money, I don't think, is going to be as much or as often as it could have been. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I know you're your basically strategy or style, like you're even speaking about now, is to kind of delay the sale to even maybe an extreme, and you've even said this, maybe an extreme compared to other people. You're willing to go out and nurture that lead for as long as it takes, a long time before you're expecting even that person to become a client or, invest in a product that you have.
Yeah, I mean, so in one of my businesses, I send out an email every day, right? So it's daily.
Right.
And even with that, I mean, I refer to as kind of growing clients, like I'm growing my own clients over time. And like I have people that have been on there 1, 2+ years before they pick up the phone that one day and call or send an email, and they're just ready.
Yeah, and it's funny, they just call you out of the blue. You're like, oh, over a year you've been on the list? Wow. So. Yeah,
so, I mean, I think you have to ask yourself, what is the longest time horizon that I'm willing to be in this for? Because I think the people that come at this game with a longer view, it's easier to win than the people that have to make something happen.
That makes sense. Well, what's your maybe advice to the people out there that they really can't wait? Maybe they're just starting out. Maybe they have either their plumbing business offline or they're an online entrepreneur. I mean, is there a strategy that you can kind of maybe combine the two and get the immediate results and the long term, where you can kind of stick it out and wait for that payday?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a balance to be found in pushing hard when you're selling, as long as you make it clear that you don't need them to buy.
Right.
Because if you go out there and you need people to buy, that's when your rates get cut in half. That's when you get pressured to do things twice as fast as they should take. I mean, that's when things don't work out well for you and you go crazy,
That's great.
So to any service business, I mean, plumber, for goodness sake, there are probably very few that are doing the very basic, like list building stuff that I'm sure you talk about all the time, right? To create an asset that has some momentum behind it, meaning a growing group of people that know, like, and trust you, so that when the first of every month hits, you're not starting from zero.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's funny you say that. A lot of clients, I've worked with a lot of plumbers too, and I work with a lot of offline and online businesses, but I'd say 99% of them just don't have a list. That's the first thing I'll ask, do you have a current customer list? Because obviously that's where the money is, right away, the instant. And a lot of those people don't. They say, oh, I got names, maybe phone numbers somewhere, but it's not organized or in a list or even the email list.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, they're leaving a lot of money on the table.
I think, and worse than that, they're leaving a lot of relationship building and trust building, and they're not being as valuable to their current and future customers as they could.
Right.
So they could
even referral.
A plumber 4 times a year could send out something to their list, how to get your pipes ready for summer or for winter, or things to be like. They could drum up a reason to remind these people that they're alive, and then offer a very simple, time-bound, I'll come and do XYZ for X dollars off.
Right.
It's really, really simple.
Yeah, that is a good point, too. And I was saying, too, I mean, I think, like you said, they're leaving a lot of relationships, everything else on the table, even the referrals from, them, mentioning to their friends, oh, you need a plumber, or you need an electrician, or you need, and unfortunately, they're just kind of dropping the ball. And when you were saying, like, kind of like continuing and continuing to contact those people and so on, and I know you do this for clients, you do, the multi-step lead generation. And can you give maybe an example or examples of maybe a successful multi-step lead generation system maybe that you've created either for your own business, a client, or maybe one of that would be a good example of this?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've over the years I wasn't as bright, or I wasn't as clued in to what works as I am now, just because I've been doing it for a while,
Right.
And so, the typical multi-step lead generation sequence or campaign, I think that's fine. But obviously, there's like a beginning and an end, right? Like it's finite. It might be 4 steps. It might be 7 steps.
Right.
And so that's cool. But what happens then? right? Because especially when you're selling yourself and when you're selling a service, it's not like we have 30 iPhones on the shelf and when they're gone, you miss out. Like
right.
you have your time that you're selling basically. And so if you push too hard because you're on your last step of the lead gen sequence, you really shoot yourself in the foot, and your fees will come down and the terms will come down because you pushed your way in the door. And so over the years, I've kind of transitioned to an idea more of like I call it a platform. A lot of people call it a platform.
Right.
And all that is really simple. I mean, it could be a newsletter, right? But something that never stops, something that is consistent, even if it's not that frequent.
Right.
And something that continues the conversation indefinitely with the people you're trying to get to hire you. Because then
that's a great way to say it.
You don't care if they buy or not today or next week or next month. Like, you just keep doing what you're doing.
Right. Yeah, that constant flow. Nice.
Yeah, that to me, I mean, I've been doing that personally for now about 2 years, and it's like a snowball. And when that snowball gets going, it's really amazing what you can achieve. And you're not going to do that with like a 3-step lead generation program that disappears then, you know?
Yeah, so you're constantly working and continuing to nurture and grow, like you're saying, right?
Yeah, because, I mean, back to the plumber idea, like, there are a bazillion plumbers. Like you don't want to be the guy they call when someone just needs a plumber. Like,
right.
You want to be Bob, the plumber, and I want Bob. I don't want another plumber because I don't trust another plumber.
Right.
And,
yeah,
and when that happens, then you're like, yeah, you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah. Nice. Do you think that when you're doing the multi-step, you know, I mean, obviously with the lead generation, the multi-step, you're building a relationship, you're building the trust. And then once they become that actual customer, I guess this is where also a lot of business owners kind of drop the ball and they just leave it at that. They're the one-time customer, and then they go out and they start all over and try to get a new customer and then start all over and et cetera. So I guess really where a lot of money can be made, and actually Doberman Dan and I were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about the back end, and we were talking about during the interview some of his styles or things he likes to do on the back end, which if anybody's listening and not familiar, the back end is simply just a product you sell to that customer after they bought the initial product, after the first product. So, I mean, how many back end product or services do you maybe put into action on, say, one of your services or products?
So my business has two sides, right? The more traditional sales and marketing consulting, direct response copywriting, those are higher ticket items, right? And right. That is a certain type of client. Then the other side of my business is a product-based business where I sell, information.
Right.
And so and the back end there then is the higher ticket services. This is an idea that you can slice and dice a million ways. And I think for the average business owner, it's smart to think not, okay, now they're my customer, how can I get more money from them? But, okay, now they trusted me enough to give me money. What bigger problems, more painful problems am I aware of that they have, and how can I solve those? And that's where your ideas can come from.
Nice. I mean, yeah, like you said, they complement or kind of contribute to their additional problems. That's nice.
That's really what we do. We solve problems. That's what businesses do.
Yeah, that's great. But is when you're talking about basically multiple back ends too? Do you kind of do the marketing ladder philosophy or strategy where you they buy at one price, the next product you offer or service is a higher price, and so on up the ladder? Or do you kind of do a mix and match where there's upsells and downsells?
I do offer kind of like an ascension, suite of things, right? So
right.
On the product side, like my cheapest product might be $47.97. I kind of view it like a solar system, right? So those more, cheaper things are outside on the most outer end of my orbit, right?
Right.
And then I have a layer that's a little bit closer for people that want to take a step closer, more value. There's obviously a bigger investment required for more value. And so there are just several layers like that, and eventually I'm in the center, and relatively few, relatively speaking, a percentage, wise, 100% of the customers on the outside, 5% ever end up at that middle, the sun, me, right? And we're working directly one-on-one. So I think about it that way, and then I think about, rather than them climbing the ladder, it's more about me creating the attraction that pulls them in.
That's a great way of looking at it. That's nice, and that's key too. Like you said, attraction, and like we've been talking about too, that goes into also better prices that you can charge and get from the attraction versus chasing.
Yeah, I mean, you have to engineer it so that they want you. That is the easiest way I've found.
Is there maybe something you found as far as like a tip for the listeners that has caused maybe kind of the scales to tip in your favor in engineering, maybe the trust factor or basically a pull factor to you, something that maybe they can start out kind of implement, maybe short term or long term, and kind of help them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it begins with a very simple decision about, and a commitment really, even if it's small, about how often you're going to show up for your prospects, whether or not they hire you.
Okay.
Right? And you can show up in many forms, a newsletter, a podcast like you're doing. What is the least, time-consuming, difficult commitment you can make for your prospect? So go back to the plumber. Can a plumber collect the names and addresses of his prospects and customers, all the incoming calls that never convert, all that kind of stuff? And then is it too much for that plumber to send out a one-page thing every month about things to be aware of, maybe in relation to seasonal changes or whatever,
right,
that are valuable to those people?
That's a good point. And even like you just said too, it's funny when you ask people like where they heard about you. It's a simple question when they call in. You simply say, where did you see my ad? Where did they heard about it? But there's so many people out there that just don't do it, and they don't know what advertising's working, what marketing's working for them, and there's a lot of things kind of in the system. But I think just simply starting, like you're saying, building that list, getting the data, simply sending out an email, whether it's once a week or whatever, just be consistent with it, and you can definitely multiply, the results. Is there?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know going in how valuable the consistency part was going to be. I thought it was more going to be about how awesome can I, be at doing this, and no, like 50-60% of the results have come from the fact that it is just consistent for a while.
Right. It doesn't pay off immediately, but it's coming eventually.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, and then I just have one more.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Then, like, again with the plumber, if you have this like platform thing, right? It's a newsletter, but you make it a little more interesting than that. Then when the Yellow Pages calls and says, "Do you want to put an ad in the Yellow Pages?" Every other plumber ad is like probably X dollars off service or free consultation or like stuff that makes it really easy for someone to call you and say, "Well, this guy does it for this, will you do it for less?" Which is not the position you want to be in, right?
Right.
And so your ad in the Yellow Pages might simply be for that newsletter for free.
Right.
So you're showing up completely different, which is another one of the Dan Kennedy principles from that book that you mentioned.
Yeah, that's a great principle. I think it was I want to say Earl Nightingale that said, kind of look at what everybody else is doing and do the opposite, something to that effect.
It's pretty effective most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. And going back to, I guess, the priceless price raising or priceless necessity, basically what it comes down to, like you said, if you're consistent, you're showing up, you're continuing to follow up with these people, obviously you can get better prices too because they're coming to you and, you're attracting them versus chasing. Is there something you found that's also contributed to people being able to achieve higher prices as well for their services?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, everybody on the call probably should just go buy that Dan Kennedy book so I can stop quoting it. But
right.
the real secret is that when you do these types of things that build the trust, as you'll read in this book, the hiring decision becomes more about who they're hiring than what that person is doing. And right. I read that a long time ago, and now I experience it, and it's totally true. If you can engineer things so that they want you above everyone else, well, then price is not priority number one in their decision.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. A lot of people think, well, my competition charges X, so I have to be cheaper, and then you become a commodity, and that's the last thing you want to become.
Yeah, if you're asking questions like that, you are in a race to the bottom, even if you don't know it.
Right. And kind of like, and I guess the Walmart example that everybody uses all the time, how they can kind of come into any town and pretty much wipe out all the little mom and pop shops. But really, if they would continue to build that relationship, kind of set themselves apart, make it a unique experience for that person to come in, they could definitely at least keep up or at least stay consistent with what they were even before Walmart came into town and kind of wiped them out, or any competition.
Yeah, I mean, you can't compete with Walmart at the game that Walmart plays.
Right.
You have to play a different game. So the plumber can't compete with other plumbers. He has to play a different game. He can't sell, I can fix your leak. He has to sell, I'm Bob, and you trust me more than everybody else. Right.
And that's what actually a client I worked with about 6 months ago in Florida, we did something similar where no one in the area was doing it, but we sent out, and it was more about his personality and him versus, just a typical plumber, because, a lot of people, they'll just call you when they need, a leak fixed, whatever. Well, he became kind of like you were saying, kind of a fixture in their top of the mind. He would talk about things going on in the community, and also obviously tie it into his services and products. And that's achieved a lot better results for him versus the old traditionary newsletter he was sending out, where he'd send once a month out, just saying, hey, I'm here, remember me, call me, call me. So, I guess that goes into a lot of, like you were saying, showing up different and positioning. Is there something you found, too, with the positioning? Because positioning can be a game changer, and all these things, I guess, we've talked about really can be related to that. Is there something you found that's been able to catapult even the new people out there to a better position, or at least in the eyes of the market?
I think, if you're brand new, the thing that took me forever to figure out was the fact that I kind of went out there looking for results that I had created to prove to me that I was deserving of doing things like asking for more money or stuff like that, right? And I only discovered that that's really backwards, because it puts you in a very needy state of being, right? Like you're looking for what you do to reap good things so that you can kind of feel good about yourself and then go and raise your rates and stuff like that. And that just, I think that the more effective way to get results quick is to get clear, to work out whatever issues you have about how much you are or are not worth first, and to simply go out there and ask for what you want, and then figure out how do I engineer a situation with my marketing or with what I offer that makes what I'm asking a good deal for them. So I guess the short answer would be you got to just get the guts to go do it the way you want to do it. And that's where the attraction model works so well too, because then when you can be bold like that, then you attract the people that want that.
That's an awesome point. And I think it was even a couple of days ago you sent out a newsletter talking about, and you've talked about this before as well, is not needing permission. not asking people, giving yourself permission, giving ourselves permission to achieve or do what we want versus trying to be needy and ask for permission from others, whether it be clients, customers, or just, others.
Yeah. Well, and I think ultimately, like, if you have a service business or in any business, you want to please the customer, and I really think that that's not the goal. And it's trouble because then you play this little mind game with yourself about whether you think they like you and what you're doing. And that really has nothing to do with you helping them solve the problem you're there to solve. So I think that's the other thing that has changed for me over the years. I'm now more focused on the goal than whether or not they like me.
That's a great point too. The goal versus trying to get that approval and recognition.
Yeah. I mean it feels. I mean early in my even later than I'm readily willing to admit publicly. Sometimes the client-provider relationship, it can feel like a teacher-student, right? It like reminds you of the grade school where the teacher tells you what to do, and if you don't do it right, you get, penalized somehow.
Right.
And like that's really embedded deeply in a lot of us, and it's time to have that get thrown away.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I think if I'm right here, I think you have a program, and I think it's called like the Bigger Self, or is that right? Or
I have a product called the Big Self Blueprint where I just kind of walk through the process that I went through, over years, right? It's not like a pill that you take. Just kind of working through some of these issues that created huge, I mean, this may sound like all up in the air theoretical stuff, but it really does create huge practical problems for entrepreneurs.
Right. And I guess that's probably, that could be, I would say maybe even the top, like maybe one or two things that really hold a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners back is their self. That's the major hurdle in business. They think it's, the economy, the competition, et cetera, and it really comes back to, like you say, yourself is a lot of times holding you back.
Yeah, I really think, for businesses like mine, like consulting, any kind of professional service, that's what I'm most familiar with. I really think it's at least 60% of the game, if not more. Yeah,
mental and it's true because if you look at even take our niches in the marketing world and copywriting world, there's some people out there that are charging a lot of money, sometimes six figures for certain copy. And if you look at it, it's really not six-figure copy, but it's like you were saying before, it's kind of who they are, not really what they do.
It is, and like, is that smart? Is that fair? Like, these are all the questions that our like training brings up in our mind. Like, I could never do that. I could never gyp a client like that, and that's like all of those thoughts are the problem.
Right.
We're all adults, and if you ask for a price and that price is willingly accepted and paid, that's really the end of the discussion, provided you didn't lie about something, which is very simple to know if you did that. It really begins and ends there. So all those stories that we tell ourselves about, well, I want to charge this much, but if I charge that's just too much. It's uncomfortable. It makes me feel uncomfortable. And all those kinds of things are what you want to make go away.
Yeah, and I think you too. We were talking about there's an article you wrote, basically where you talked about harvesting the secret, or and basically this kind of relates. Can you kind of share a little bit about that? Or?
Yeah, I think that article was about how in any business you're in, the kind of the real secrets that make it work, at least in my experience, are not things that were readily obvious. I spent a long time kind of chasing shiny objects and looking for the secret to this or that was like right on the surface, right? And I wasted a lot of time doing that when I should have. What it really showed was a lack of commitment to just doing real work on my part.
Okay.
because now what do I do every day? I wake up and write an email to a lot of people, right?
Right.
So like, no one's going to say that that's like a revolutionary business model by any stretch of the imagination. It does take a lot of work, however, and I wish I had committed to doing this 5 years ago instead of 2 years ago.
Right.
Because the things I discovered after that point, those are the real secrets, you know, and they're several layers deep.
That's a great point. And I guess kind of talking about newsletters too, because I think this is kind of a debate, and I've gone back and forth on this too. But I guess when you're sending out, let me kind of hear your thoughts on this. You know, I used to do kind of like 100% straight value, where it would be like kind of like a book, you know, chapter or section in my newsletters. And I would always get a lot of great compliments, great newsletter, et cetera. But I didn't see as many sales and conversions. And when I kind of changed that to, you know, I still give value, but not as kind of like textbook. It's more like, you know, give stories, examples, et cetera, and tie it into their business. Have you found that kind of like the straight value emails or all content has worked better for you in what you're doing, or have you found that kind of like the mixing of stories and value? Because I personally noticed kind of a shift, and maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like kind of more of a shift on your part where you're more into talking about, like we were talking about, more of the bigger self and really doing that, because that's really a major obstacle or hurdle.
Yeah. So what, I'm 2 years into this. I think you develop a kind of an intuition for your own situation about what that mix should be like. I can tell you that before I started the Art of Client stuff, there was a period during which I wrote like a major blog post like every day for, I don't know, maybe 3 months.
Okay.
So 100% pure content, right? Because I don't really have anything to sell. When you're consulting, I can't like put it up on the shelf, right? It depends on what you need.
Right.
At least that's how I run my business. And so it was pure content. I got a lot of eyeballs, and absolutely nothing really ultimately came from it. Anything else than that, you know? So yeah, cool, great job, like good comments, they're fine.
Right.
It did nothing.
Right.
And I'm not sure that the question, though, is about do you just do straight content or do you want to sell? Like, what I really missed the mark on with those blog posts was, number one, I didn't stand for anything. Number two, I wasn't really solving the right problems that people had, right? And so all this content was really misdirected.
Okay.
Which is totally different than what I'm doing now, because most of my emails, ideas begin with, what problem do I want to address today?
Right. That makes a lot of sense.
And then me talking about that naturally leads into me recommending how to solve it quicker or better through products and services. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, it does. Maybe my question was a little kind of two-sided to it. But I guess really, because like I said, I used to, when I did get unsubscribed, I would hear stuff like, instead of like, crappy newsletter or something, which you would expect, it'd be like, great value. I just don't have time to put this into action. And I'm thinking, what do you mean you don't have time? I'm literally giving you something that you'd have to pay for somewhere else, and you don't have time to do this. And really kind of where I kind of switched is by telling more stories, by kind of switching and like you said, more of the big idea in every email or what I'm trying to accomplish. I've seen not only less unsubscribes, I've seen a lot more results as far as click-throughs, sales, et cetera. So
I don't think we're I think things have shifted a little bit. I don't think we're in the teaching business. I don't think teaching sells at all.
Right.
I think selling sells. And if people ultimately wanted to learn how we do what we do, they would go learn it, because all of that information is available. Right.
Yeah.
So we're doing something kind of different.
Right.
And it's part teaching,
Right.
It's part empowering, inspiring, directing, focusing. Like, it's those kinds of things which are much more valuable to people.
Yeah, that's and like you're saying too, to kind of more be the leader versus a teacher.
Yeah, I mean, so a plumber could say, what do I stand for? I mean, has anyone ever thought of a plumber standing for something, like a bigger cause than themselves? You know,
right.
It's totally possible.
Yeah, I guess that's really kind of if you're saying, like, what do they stand for, I guess that can fall into kind of like the big idea section too of big idea. Because I remember also reading on I believe it was your blog or your site, you were talking about basically, coming up with a big idea and kind of like your thoughts. Basically what you were talking about was uncovering the big ideas, like reading between the lines. And you gave a great example, I think, at the time was a newsletter. You talked about someone creating a newsletter and how it's much more than a newsletter. Can you maybe give that example to them, or even any other example off your top of the head, coming up with a big idea?
Well,
making
I can do it. I can do it like with the client letter, which is the daily email that I write now.
Okay.
So you might come to the site and see, it's called Art of Clients. It's all for people who work with clients, right? So you might think it's about how to get clients and how to set your fees and that kind of stuff. And on one level that is, but that's not those are not the big ideas behind that, because frankly, they're not that exciting, right? And how many ways do you talk about them?
Right.
And I write every day. So the big ideas behind the client letter exist on a much deeper emotional level. So one of them is 60 to 80% of this game is how you feel about yourself. Number two is you're way more talented and prepared than you believe you are. So let's fix that. Okay. And number three, your ability to go out there and shine yourself up in a unique way and present yourself in a way that is different and better and more valuable, though in there are the seeds of your success. So like, those are the big ideas that I can slice and dice and talk about in story or what's happened to me or like forever.
Nice. That's awesome too, because I mean most people would, and no matter what niche they're in, most people just think I'm sending out, like you say, an email newsletter or a newsletter, and you've made it much more about more than just a newsletter, and now it becomes, like you said, empowering, and you're standing for something and also giving value much more than just a newsletter to people.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of business owners hear the word newsletter and they're like, oh my goodness, what am I going to write every month, right? Because I only have so much to say.
Right.
And I think the switch that you should flip is to stop viewing your newsletter as being about you and make it be about them.
That's awesome point. Yeah.
So
it does make the writing easier too.
It does. Instead of saying what do I want to tell them, you ask what is most valuable for them to hear.
Right.
And I think that makes a lot of difference.
Yeah, that's perfect. So I guess, the big idea obviously is like you turned it into the newsletter much more than it is. And you've talked about these too. Like the big idea obviously is one way to, even in the writing world, that's what your main focus should be on, the big idea, that main one idea. Is there maybe some tips you can leave the listeners today with, maybe a couple more ways to kind of boost their productivity or profits on their sales letters?
Yeah, I mean,
the big idea is huge.
Well, I think that's between the big idea and the actual offer, what right. You're offering and how that looks. I think that's a lot of the battle, and I think you kind of get to the big idea by, setting down what you're selling in front of you, right, and start thinking about, okay, this is what I'm selling, but this is not what they're buying. Like, what do they get, really? What are all the things they get because of buying this thing? So right. In the example of like that financial newsletter thing that I was writing about, people could say, oh, it's financial newsletter about options trading or whatever. So right. On the surface, yeah, that's what you're selling. But that's not really why the guy is buying it. like it could be a lot of reasons, but one could be this is kind of a contrarian kind of thing. This is for people who want to zig when everybody else is zagging. This is for the folks that don't want the watered down, CNBC blah, blah commentary that means nothing. Right. This is for the people in the know that want, kind of the fast track that nobody knows. Like, so now we're getting into bigger, more exciting ideas that this newsletter represents.
It changes. Like I said before, it really transforms it. Like you're saying, it now wait, and I'm just kind of stressing this because this is huge for any product or service. If you can get the big idea like you're talking about, it can change it. You're now not another newsletter provider. You're much more.
Yeah, I mean, and sorry to pick on plumbers, but I think it's a good example because it's probably very rare that this kind of mindset is in. I mean, who teaches this kind of stuff? But, so a plumber might think that he or she fixes leaks. But, like, that's just the surface, right? Because if I put myself in the shoes of the client, when I've had a plumber come over, it's so that I can sleep well at night, right? It's so that I don't have to worry about waking up to $40,000 of damage on my house.
Right.
So, like, that's really what I'm buying.
Yeah, now the commodity switches too, the commodity factor. Now you're not just price shopping, you're looking for the...
That's right. Like what price do I put on a good night's sleep? Not having to worry that my wall's going to, collapse because the drip has been dripping from behind there.
Right. That's awesome. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I definitely want to thank you. It's been awesome talking to you, Jason, and been great value shared. And definitely I want to thank you for coming on the 5th episode, the Fast, Easy Success Marketing Insider here. And before everyone goes out and dives into all the action and everything we talked about, can you definitely tell the listeners out there places they can learn more about you or maybe sign up for your newsletter or anything available?
Yeah, so if anybody's in a service business, I write the daily client letter at artofclients.com, ARTOF as in Frank, clients.com, and they can see kind of, whether or not I practice what I preach at jasonleister.com. That's JASONLEIS as in Sam, TER.com.
Nice. Yeah, and definitely I recommend everyone listening to go check it out and definitely go to those 2 sites as well. It's definitely worth it. And not only, like you said, as he practice what he preaches, definitely there's some refreshing ideas I think you'll get about the bigger stuff. And I'm not talking about the hokey-pokey kind of like secret stuff. I'm talking about, really stuff inside that can really, change and transform you, not only your personal life, but definitely business. So definitely, and thanks again, definitely, for coming on today. And maybe hopefully in the future we can talk again and jam out.
Yeah, awesome. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the listeners out there, I definitely hope you enjoyed the show and most importantly take action on everything Jason and I talked about today. And before we go real quick, if you could just do me 2 quick favors out there, I'd really appreciate it. Just simply hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future business boosting podcasts. And if you stuck around this far with Jason and I, you obviously enjoyed the show and saw the value. So make sure you leave those 5-star reviews with all the comments there. Just need your help getting noticed, get all the value out to more people. And I really everyone tuning into the show today and leaving those 5-star reviews. And when you're done, go ahead and head over to Jason's site for sure and go ahead and grab your business cheat sheets waiting over at fasteasysuccess.com. And I'm your host, Eric Barton, the Results Specialist, signing out today. And we'll see you next week for another Fast, Easy Success Marketing Insider. Here's to your success.